What's good? Hey man, so last night's Summer League officially ended, so we are here today with my 2026 winners and losers after Summer League. And I want to preface this video by saying, as pretty much every single Summer League recap video you see is going to say, I don't take Summer League too seriously. I don't think that because a guy had a great Summer League, it means he's going to be LeBron James. And I don't think because a guy had a terrible Summer League, that means he's going to be out of the league this season for 99% of guys. You know what I mean? Summer League is just Summer League. You're not thinking it's NBA comp. Rookies could look better than they're actually going to look. Rookies could look worse than they're actually going to look. We've seen guys have phenomenal summer leagues and go on to be terrible NBA players, and we've seen vice versa, right? So just go ahead and preface the video with that. Now, we're going to start this video out talking about our winners, and the first winner that I want to do is Yaxel Lindenborg, and I don't know if I'm saying your name right, so forgive me if I'm not, but Yaxel very much won Summer League MVP for a reason. I think he's a very solid rebounder, and I think he plays with a lot of confidence. He's very obviously a guy that's not scared to talk, whether that be with his pitch to LeBron James or whether that be with the way he talks. I saw him even do like the too small a couple of times. I just saw him talking throughout Summer League, and while obviously he's going to have those moments where that looks terrible once he starts his NBA career, he's going to have a moment during his NBA career where he talks to the wrong person and it doesn't show up or whatever, and it's going to be something that's going to be all over Twitter, and he's going to be getting clowned. That will happen during his rookie year, but I think he showed a lot of good things during Summer League. I think he's got good size and length, and I think he uses that very well, especially when driving. I think he drives towards the basket with a purpose in transition especially, and I think he's good at getting stops and transition on the other end. And I think one of the things that really, really stood out to me when I was watching his game was how good of I don't want to necessarily say he's a phenomenal playmaker, because I don't really necessarily think he was really getting guys open or passing guys open or orchestrating the offense. But I think he's a very good decision maker, and I think he's a good passer. There were some passes throughout his Summer League where he made them like a timely decision, a smart decision, the right decision, and then he made the pass where it needed to go. And I think those are some phenomenal things to see, especially because Golden State is a team that's going to need immediate impact, right? And with Yaxel being an older rookie that has some of those things, some of those talents where he will be able to provide for you as an older rookie and without maybe needing the ball as much as, or I don't want to say that he's not going to need the ball, but when he has the ball or when you need him to pass out, I think you can feel pretty confident that he's going to be able to find a Stephen Curry or Jimmy Butler or whatever. And I think Yaxel had a very, very good Summer League. Next guy, Malik Thomas, man. I think he had probably the craziest scoring outburst in all of Summer League, just with his scoring consistency throughout Summer League. I think he proved that he can be the guard backing up James Harden, especially towards the end of the season. I would not be surprised if we start to see more of him rather than a Dennis Schroeder. Now, what I will say is I think Dennis Schroeder, at least right now, is definitely a better defender. So don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that you're going to come into the season and Malik Thomas is going to be the sixth man, but Malik Thomas definitely, I think, in my opinion, proved that he deserves guard minutes on this team, whether James Harden comes back or not. He shot very well from three, and he was an efficient scorer from everywhere on the court. I mean, if you just go look at his Summer League numbers, they say what they need to say. He really didn't have a bad game in Summer League, and his numbers were very good, very consistent, and very efficient throughout all of Summer League. Now, moving on, we're going to talk about just the top four guys in this draft. In my opinion, I think all four of these guys had pretty good Summer Leagues when they played. I think all four pretty much show that they did deserve to be the top four picks. We'll just go from 1 through 4. So AJ Debonsa, he only played 2 games in the Summer League, but to me, he looked very good in both games. He scored at will, and he got to the free throw line consistently, which I think is a very, very big thing for scorers in this league. We see it with guys like Shea, Embiid, all these guys, and I'm not saying he's going to be one of those guys, but as a guy that is projected to be able to score on that level, it is always reassuring when you see, especially at such a young age, a guy with the ability to say, okay, boom, no matter what's going on with my shot falling, shot not falling, am I getting to the basket, am I not getting to the basket, I'm always going to be able to just draw some contact, get some easy points, and just kind of settle myself. I think that is probably my favorite part of AJ Debonsa's game, is that he just kind of has that mentality, that veteran mentality, where it's just hey, if I'm not going to score, best believe I'm going to get to the line. So I like that. I think he rebounded very well, and I think his three-point shooting definitely left a lot to be desired. He did not have good three-point shooting numbers throughout this Summer League, but I think we all expected for that to pretty much be the aspect of his game that would need the most work. So for him to not have the best shooting outburst in Summer League isn't anything that's too surprising or too, I think, it's not like a ring the alarm bells type of thing for him. Moving on to Darren Peterson, I think of the top four picks, Darren Peterson did play the worst of any of these guys, and I think that's mostly just because of his efficiency. He really didn't have any Summer League games where he was super, super efficient. He struggled for the most part with fouls and turnovers a lot, and I know in a Summer League game you get 10 fouls or whatever, but he did struggle with turnovers, with fouls, especially in that game where he did go against the Wizards and AJ Debonsa, where I think he had He had like 8 turnovers. I don't remember. I don't want to say that that's 100%. Like, that's not gospel, but he had a lot of turnovers in that game. It just wasn't the prettiest game. But it is very obvious that he's a scorer. It is very obvious that he can get to his spots. And while those shots weren't falling at the efficiency you want him to, I think a lot of the things that we're worried about with his game for Summer League will kind of be mitigated when he's playing alongside the actual Utah Jazz roster and he's not trying to do so much, and he's got other guys that are there to kind of set him up, and he's able to play off of those guys a little more, and he's got other options where if he's not able to score or get a good look up, he's going to have a Jaren Jackson, he's going to have an Ace Bailey, he's going to have a Keontae George, like he's going to have whoever, you know what I mean? So he's going to have a roster around him that I think will help some of these worries, deficiencies look a little better. Moving on, Cam Boozer. I think he played well. He did have a 12-point outing that was the worst Summer League performance by far of any of the top 4 guys, but he looked good in the championship, had a good game with like 19 and 8, and I think he looked good for the most part, and I'm a huge fan of his, and I think a big part of the reason that I am a huge fan of his is just because of how much he can do on the court, his versatility, and just like not just his versatility, but the ease at which he makes things happen on the court. Like, I think he's one of those, I don't want to call him Nikola Jokic or anything like that, but I think he's one of those guys where he can do a lot of things on the offensive side of the ball like Nikola Jokic, because he's not a phenomenal defender and he's not a super athletic guy. But I think he's a good passer. His 3-point shot looked phenomenal in Summer League. He looked good at Duke, so we will have to see if that's able to translate to the NBA, because if it can, I think that just makes his ceiling skyrocket. We have to see how good of a defensive player he could be. But I am very excited to watch Cam Boozer play. I think he's a guy that has a lot of talent offensively. I think he's a guy that will be able to just kind of get to his spots, and is a guy that has a bag offensively that's deep enough to where it's not going to be super flashy, but you're going to look at it and you're going to look at Cam Thomas, or you're going to look at Cam Boozer and probably be like, damn, he's just, no matter what, going to get his 20 and 9, his 18 and 8, his 20 and 10, whatever it's going to be throughout his career. So I think that's the type of guy he's going to be, just based off what I've seen so far. I'm a big fan of Cam Boozer and his skill set. And then finally, Caleb Wilson, who's the guy that probably generated the most buzz, the most talk of any of the top 4 picks with his Summer League play. I mean, I love his attitude, right? He comes into Chicago, says he wants to be better than Jordan, and is talking about how he beat all the guys drafted ahead of him in Peterson, Boozer, and DeBonsa when he played against them in high school or college or wherever it may have been. And then he goes out there and he follows that up in a game against Cam Boozer in his first Summer League game, and he has a 35-point performance. Just phenomenal. Super tough to see that. And that game against Memphis was literally insane. I mean, the man hit 7 threes, and he looked so much better than Cam Boozer in that matchup. It didn't help that was Cam Boozer's worst game of the Summer League, but he looked so athletic. His motor is so obviously high. His drive is so obviously high. I don't think you have to worry about him as a guy that's going to take plays off on either side of the ball. I'm buying all the Caleb Wilson hype after this Summer League performance. Let me just put it to you like that. Next, we got a couple of second-year guys, man. The first one is going to be Cedric Howard. I think aside from Cam Boozer, who we already discussed, the Grizzlies have a lot to look forward to after this Summer League, and I think a lot of that outside of Cam Boozer, like I said, is because of Cedric Howard. Had a good game in the championship where he was a good, efficient scorer. I think he finished with like 18 points or something like that as well, and maybe 18 rebounds as well. Or am I mixing up his stat line with Boozer's? They had very similar stats in that championship game. I just don't remember. Efficient scorer, I think he had an efficient game in that last game, but he did have some inefficiencies sprinkled in here and there throughout the Summer League, but I think he looked very, very good. I think he was very obviously a leader of this Grizzlies Summer League squad. I think he showed some flashes on the defensive end as well, which is something that I think Cedric Howard has shown that he can do. He is a good defender. He already had a good rookie season where he was an all-rookie team guy, and I think it just kind of looks like he was trying to solidify himself, was trying to show the Grizzlies, like, don't ever send me to Summer League again, with all due respect. And I think he really is going to be one of the main courses of this Memphis Grizzlies team this year. And that's mostly because they're a team that's rebuilding for sure. And they got rid of John Morant and Jaren Jackson and Desmond Bane within the last year and all this stuff. But Cedric Howard is a guy that's really good. Now, someone that didn't know anything about him during college but heard good things when he was drafted, I have been pleasantly surprised with how good Cedric Howard has been, and just like almost like he's not a guy that's not like a Cooper Flagg, and I'm not trying to glaze him like that, but like I feel like he came into the NBA as a very NBA ready player, and I feel like he came out in this Summer League and showed that, yeah, he's still that guy. Anyways, another second year guy, and this is a guy that I think I was a huge fan coming of coming out of college and then didn't get much of an impact his rookie year. Jace Richardson, man, I think he absolutely showed out in Summer League, and to me, he did enough to play himself into Orlando's real rotation, and I think a lot of that is because his shooting is something that Orlando desperately needs. And I know this is something that we've been saying for the last couple of years now, but imagine them. I don't think last year, if they have Jace Richardson playing in like the real rotation, that they blow that 3-1 lead against against Detroit, or if like they have a Jace Richardson, the way he looked in Summer League, they don't lose that 3-1 lead against Detroit. And I know they lose Franz Wagner and all that, and that's the biggest reason for that. But I mean, Jace Richardson shooting is something that is going to be a big help and a big relief to this Orlando Magic offense. And a lot of times he was very efficient, even in times during the Summer League where he didn't get a ton of shots, didn't get a ton of looks. And I think that's a really good thing, because I think that's realistic and kind of what his NBA career is going to look like, at least this year. He won't be a featured guy for Orlando. He won't be a guy that's going to the Magic and that's able to get like 8 or 14, or that's able to get 14, 15 shots or anything like that. So his ability to come into Summer League and to have a game where he might have 5 or 6 shots and to still be efficient and to still get his points and do what he needed to do in those limited minutes or with those limited shots, I think was a massive thing. Because like I said, I think that's probably going to be his role in Orlando, even though I think he will have a bit of a bigger role in Orlando this year. Another second-year guy, Kemon Maluach, man. And I think probably of the second-year guys, he probably had my favorite Summer League. He was a guy who, again, just like Jace Richardson, I was a huge fan of heading into the draft and then didn't get a whole bunch of play during his rookie year. But I genuinely think with the Summer League, he played himself into the real rotation. And not only that, I am a big believer that Kemon Maluach by the end of the season will prove to be the best center on this Phoenix Suns roster. He's a good lob threat. He's a phenomenal defender. He's athletic. He's a big body. He rebounds, and he uses his skill set, his size, like a traditional big man, and his ability to stretch the floor in this Summer League is something that we will obviously have to see if that continues. But his ability to stretch the floor in this Summer League is what has his ceiling above a Mark Williams and an Oso Ighodaro, who are above him on the depth chart for me. I wouldn't even be surprised if it's by the All-Star break, but we're looking at him as like the solidified starter in Phoenix. Oh, and also, before we get off the Suns, shout out to Suns forward Koa Pete, who, I don't know if he's like a forward or a center. I don't know. I feel like when I watch him play, I see him like listed on the depth chart sometimes as like their last option center, but then I also be seeing him listed as like a forward. So I don't know, but I'm going to call him a forward. Koa Pete, if he can translate any of the stuff he was doing in Summer League to the NBA level, he will definitely be a guy that comes off that bench for Phoenix this year as well. Now, this is not a second-year player or even a player at all in this next one, but we're going to go to a full team, man, the Washington Wizards. And look, we already talked about AJ DeBonzo, so we won't talk about him here. But he is not the only Wizard that looked impressive in Summer League. In fact, to me, he's far from it, because there were 2 second-year guys in Trey Johnson, who I was a big fan of coming out of college, if you've been watching this channel for this long, and Will Riley. They both, to me, showed out in Summer League. Trey Johnson is a guy who I expected to have a good Summer League, and I think that's just because I thought he was going to have a better rookie year than he did. Well, he didn't have a bad rookie year. I just thought he was going to get a little more opportunity in his rookie year than he did, mostly because of his shooting ability. I am a guy that loves his shooting ability, and I think he was one of the best shooters coming out of his draft class last year, and I did get super worried about his development post-Trey Young trade, because that just put another guard ahead of him in the depth chart. But I think with the way he played the Summer League, he has a very real chance of being that backup guard, or whatever, whether they want to play him at the 1 or the 2, a backup combo guard for this team that gets real minutes and that really comes in there and is a guy that Washington Wizards fans love, and is a guy that provides something for this Washington Wizards team that is really going to be competing for a playoff spot. In the Summer League, I think he proved why he deserves minutes, right? He showed out in the game against Utah when he scored 26 points, and that's even without his three-point shot falling. And I think that's really what made that outing so impressive to me, is that he's a guy that is known as a shooter, and then for him to not have that shot falling and to still finish with 26 points in that game and to find other avenues to score was phenomenal to me. And then Will Riley, I think he did some phenomenal things in Summer League as well. I think he scored well. I think he showed that he has some shooting upside, and while his I guess sample size wasn't the biggest, he definitely showed that he can have some shooting upside. And I think if that shooting upside can prove to be real, that's how he's really going to get more minutes in Washington. And I know that that's a common theme you're seeing here, where I just talk about the shooting upside, but I mean, that's the NBA we live in, right? With him, Keyshawn George, AJ DeBonzo, and even Bilal Coulibaly, I am a very big fan of the wing depth that the Washington Wizards have going on. And I am very excited, like I said in my last video where I was talking about free agency. I'm excited to watch the Washington Wizards, man. They have a lot of young pieces and just players who I think are exciting and that can fit really well together, and whose progression I'm really excited to see. Next, moving on to another whole team, it's the Brooklyn Nets. And I think the Brooklyn Nets last year had a draft class that I was like noticeably and vocally low on. But their last player, who's Yegor, the first player they picked in that draft class and the best player out of that draft class, Yegor Diomin, I don't know, bro. It's spelled Demon, but then I hear the commentator say like Diomen or Geoman, so I'm gonna say it like that. But he's proving to be a very solid young player in this league. I think he's shown some flashes both as like an on and off ball defender where he can get some steals, get some deflections, and use his length and his size, especially against like when he's guarding a bit of a smaller guy. I think he's a solid passer, and I think his 3-point shot looks better than it did last year. But the one thing I want to say about Yegor Diomen is that I still have questions about him, man. I mean, his 3-point shot still looks questionable to me. The release still looks a little bit slow to me. And like I said, you could tell he's working on it, especially given the volume that he shot during Summer League. But I don't know. I still have questions about it. And then I would also say that, like, I feel like his length kind of bails him out a lot of times. Like, defensively, because like I don't know, I mean not defensively, offensively, because like there are times where or not bails him out, but there are times where I want him to use his length to bail him out offensively, because like it's like for a guy that's a 6'9" guard, I want to see you getting to the basket. I want to see you being more of a Ben Simmons or a Magic Johnson, where you're going to be a little bit more of a force, and you're going to use that size to kind of impose yourself at the basket and impose your will. And I think he did that against some smaller defenders in the Summer League, but I just kind of want to see him go downhill and punish defenders given his size often, because you're probably not getting the best defender on a team when you have Michael Porter Jr. and Julius Randle on your team. So for you to be a 6'9" guard and a lot of times probably have a smaller or a lesser defender on you, take them to the basket. I don't want to see you try to shoot over them. You know what I mean? That's just my biggest critique about him. But then he's not the only reason that the Nets are here, because they have a young rookie guard named Michael Brown Jr. that absolutely played phenomenally in this Summer League. His shooting looked really solid in the first 2 games during the Summer League, and I think he showed a lot of promise as a defender in those 2 games as well, especially in that game versus the Kings when he basically shut down Darius Acuff for every single possession that he was on him. His third Summer League game against the Rockets was terrible and just inefficient overall. But what I will say about that game is that game was pretty much bad for the entire Nets roster. It seemed like the Rockets were just better than them. It seemed like the Rockets out-physicaled them. And like I said, I know we're talking about Summer League, but like I'm mentioning that performance because of how bad it was. But like that was such a bad performance for the whole team that I don't want anyone who didn't watch Summer League and then goes and looks at his stats where he was like 4 for 12 or whatever it was. I don't want you to look at that and think, oh, he was the reason they had a bad game. No, the Nets were outmatched. Last 2 winners. Oh no, we got a couple more winners. I ain't gonna lie. A lot of people showed out this Summer League. Braden Burries, though, another rookie. I had no idea who Braden Burries was coming into the Summer League because I'm not a guy that watches a lot of college basketball, but he easily, and I mean easily, looked like the best player for the Milwaukee Bucks in this Summer League, and that's terrible for his teammate first-round pick Nate Mintz. But this Braden Burries, bro, he was a guy that was consistently looking to get to the basket, and he was good at finishing and drawing fouls when he gets there. He's a guy that even though he's a smaller guard, I saw him get to the basket. Braden Burries isn't really a smaller guard, but he's like 6'5", I think. So he's not really a smaller guard, but he's a stronger guard, right? Like he's a little bit of a stockier build, and I saw him get to the basket, and I saw him put his shoulder down and run through another guard of a similar size to him. And that's just something that I like to see, because there are going to be times where you're getting guarded by a guard who's going to be a little bit weaker than you. Not often, because this is the NBA, but like a guy like Braden Burries who's built like a little bit of a bulldog or like a little bit of a stockier build will be able to overpower some smaller guys. Like I said, if there's a Dennis Schroeder on him or something like that. And I think his 3-point shot was very solid as well. I can see that getting better throughout his career, but his 3-point shot looked good. He looked very willing to take it also. And while I don't think he's a pass-first guard, he does make some solid reads, especially once his driving lane has been cut off, but you can very much tell that he's looking once he catches that ball to either shoot it or drive it before he's looking to pass. And I don't mind that, because he is a guy that's listed as a 2 guard, and with the Tyler Hero acquisition, I feel like he probably will play mostly backup too, because they still have Ryan Rollins, they still have KPJ, they still have whoever over there in Milwaukee. So I feel like he probably won't be taxed too much of playing a 1 this year. I feel like if I'm Milwaukee, at least I would rather him play a 2. But if he does end up playing some hybrid combo guard or more of a 1, then that would be where I'm a little interested to see how that playmaking does look. Because I do think, like I said, he's just not a fast pass-first guard from what I saw in the Summer League at least. Last 2 guys, Bruce Thornton Jr., another guard who looked phenomenal in the Summer League, scored efficiently from the field, shot pretty well from deep, and his ability to get steals consistently throughout the Summer League was I think the thing that probably jumped out the most about him. The Rockets are a team that desperately need guard play, and that's even with Fred VanVleet coming back from injury. So his play in the Summer League, where he was able to score, he was able to shoot, he was able to get steals, he was able to hit a floater, he was able to hit floaters consistently, which is another good thing for a small guard. That is one of the most important things if you're going to be a small guard who drives to the basket, is that ability to just hit that floater and absorb the contact and get the and one, or just hit the floater over the taller defender so you're not trying to get in there and do some Kyrie type layup packages against the trees. And the thing with Bruce Thornton Jr. that I think is another reason why he could have some real impact as a rookie, even though he's going to be behind Fred VanVleet and why am I forgetting? Reed Shepherd, even though he's going to be behind those guys. A reason I think he could get some real play off the bench is because he was a 4-year guy at Ohio State. He's an older guy. He plays very intelligently. He seems to have a very good feel for just like the timing of the game and a very good he seems like a very good leader on the court. So I think that's another one of those things, you know what I mean, where you're a team like the Houston Rockets or a team like, one of these teams that's looking to compete, you're usually looking for rookies that can kind of do something for you right now, you know what I mean, unless you're a team that's got 17 draft picks like the OKC Thunder. Anyways, last winner, Allen Graves. Y'all knew I was not about to get up out of here without talking about a Toronto Raptor, man. I loved what I saw from Allen Graves, and forgive my daughter who you hear down there screaming, she's with her mother. And I am so glad that I can genuinely call Allen Graves a winner without sounding biased or whatever, because he looks like a phenomenal shooter, and he was getting up a good volume of shots for his position. He's a good cutter, and I think he's good at finishing once he does get to the basket. And while he's not I won't say wow, but he's not a back to the basket or post move type of guy, but to me, I think that's a good thing, at least for the Raptors, because the Raptors have Scotty Barnes and Kawhi Leonard, assuming the trade goes through, and a CMB and all these guys who are going to be or RJ Barrett, these guys who are going to be trying to get to the paint and taking up some space in that area with their offensive game. So to have a guy like Allen Graves who can come in and just space the floor without needing the ball, who can come in and score without needing the ball much, who can come in and make plays without needing the ball much, I just love it. I think he was able to make an offensive impact in our summer league games without ever being like the number one option, without ever being the guy that had the ball the most. You know what I mean? And I think that's a super good thing to see when he's going to be playing the type of role he is, right? Where he's going to be a role player that is coming in mostly to sit there and shoot. You know what I mean? And that's going to be a phenomenal thing for the Raptors, especially with our lack of shooting. I think Allen Graves looked absolutely phenomenal, especially for the role he's going to play this year. Now, before we get up out of here, we're going to spend a couple seconds talking about the losers, and there's a reason why I'm not going to talk about the losers from Summer League too much, and that's because, like I said, I just don't think Summer League is that important, and as a rookie, I can't really say you're too big of a loser from Summer League unless you were the number one pick and you had the worst Summer League of all time. You know what I mean? Like, I can't really call you a loser from Summer League as a rookie unless it was something crazy like that, because it's such a crazy thing to come into, to get drafted and to go deal with the Summer League and everything like that, blah, 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 blah. You go straight to Vegas, go straight to doing all this. It's such a different thing because it's like NBA basketball, but it's not NBA basketball. So I'm not going to have any rookies here unless I think they really underperform based on their draft position. And I think probably the only guy that you could probably argue from this Summer League that really did underperform based on his draft position was Ade Mara, but I don't think any of us really expected him to do much the Summer League. I don't think any of us expected him to have any impact at all as a rookie. So I don't think I need to say any more about him. But the real losers, I think the only real 100% loser from the Summer League is Drake Powell, dude. I think this is probably the worst Summer League performance maybe of all time I don't know anything about Summer League, but his numbers were so bad, it's crazy. This man was a first-round pick last year, and then he went into this Summer League and started 4 games, and he went 1 of 28 from the field in those 4 starts. That man shot the ball 28 times across 4 games, and it went in once. He combined for 11 points in those 4 games. I don't think I need to tell you much else. If those stats don't tell you how bad of a Summer League that man had, there's nothing else I can do. But I hope that's not the end of Drake Powell, because, such a young guy, I don't want anybody to be out of the league that fast. Some other guys that I want to mention that were other losers from this Summer League, mostly because I think they probably lost their jobs this Summer League. For 100%, on their rosters, they either solidified themselves as guys that won't play, or they went from a guy that was a questionable player to questionable, you might get some minutes, to you're definitely not. And those are Ryan Cockburner, Cody Williams, and Tejan Salon. I think they all lost in this offseason or in this Summer League. I think, especially as third-year guys, this is a time where you really want to come in and you want to dominate Summer League, and I just don't think they did that or did anything even close to it. I think all of them showed that they probably are close to out of the I won't say close to out of the NBA, but definitely out of their rotations. Anyways, I love y'all. I appreciate y'all. Thank you for watching as always. Please do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe on this video. I want y'all to let me know y'all Summer League winners and losers, what y'all thought about Summer League and everything like that. And I also want y'all to let me know what videos y'all want to see and everything like that. I'm going to do an NBA tier list, but I'm kind of waiting on that till after LeBron signs, because the LeBron signing will have a big impact on that tier list. And I also think LeBron's probably going to sign like sometime this week because, you know, you got pressure on Adam Silver talking about, well, we want to do it, but, you know, we can't do the schedule because LeBron, and you want LeBron on Christmas and all these things and blah, 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 blah. So I think there's probably pressure for him to make his decision. But anyways, I love you all. I appreciate y'all. To keep God first as always. All right. Peace out.